The eviction notice felt like ice in Nia's hands as she stood outside her apartment building, rain soaking through her worn jacket. 24 hours. That's all she had left before she and her sick mother would be thrown onto the streets. The medical bills had piled up so high that even working 3 jobs couldn't keep them afloat anymore. Miss Williams? A smooth voice cut through her panic. Nia turned to see a man in an expensive suit holding a black umbrella. His silver hair was perfectly styled, and his shoes probably cost more than she made in a month. Everything about him screamed money and power. "I'm Robert Hayes, attorney for the Morrison estate," he said, extending a business card. "My client has a proposition that could solve all your financial problems." Nia's stomach twisted. She'd heard of propositions like this before, wealthy men who preyed on desperate women. "I'm not interested in whatever your client wants." Mr. Hayes smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. $5 million, Miss Williams? Gosh. All you have to do is carry a child for 9 months. The number hit her like a physical blow. $5 million would save her mother's life, pay for the best treatments, and set them up forever. But the price? "This isn't some back-alley deal," Hayes continued, reading her expression. "My client is Gabriel Morrison, CEO of Morrison Tech. He's dying, Miss Williams. Stage 4 cancer. He has perhaps 6 months to live, and he needs an heir to secure his company's future." Nia's mind raced. Gabriel Morrison, she'd seen his face on magazine covers, always looking cold and untouchable. One of the richest men in the country, and he was dying. "Why me?" she whispered. "You're young, healthy, intelligent, and—" Hayes paused, his gaze lingering on her face in a way that made her skin crawl. "You fit certain specifications my client requires." The rain grew heavier, and Nia pulled her jacket tighter. Behind her, she could hear her mother coughing through the thin apartment walls. The sound that haunted her dreams and drove her to work longer hours for less pay. "The process would be completely medical," Hayes continued. "No physical contact required between you and Mr. Morrison. You would live in his estate during the pregnancy, receive the best medical care money can buy, and walk away $5 million richer." Nia's hands shook as she stared at the eviction notice. Her mother needed surgery that cost more than they could ever afford. Without it, she would die within the year. The doctors had been clear about that. "I need to think about it," she said finally. Hayes reached into his briefcase and pulled out a thick envelope. "Here's the contract and the initial medical reports you'll need to review. You have 24 hours to decide, Miss Williams. After that, Mr. Morrison will move on to other candidates." The envelope felt heavy in her hands, like it contained her entire future. As Hayes walked away, disappearing into the night like he'd never been there at all, Nia stood in the rain wondering if she was about to make the biggest mistake of her life. Inside the apartment, her mother's coughing grew worse. Nia closed her eyes and made a silent promise, whatever it took, she would save the only family she had left. Even if it meant selling her soul to a dying billionaire. The contract was thicker than any book she'd ever read, full of legal terms that made her head spin. But the number at the bottom was clear enough: $5 million for 9 months of her life. It seemed too good to be true, which meant it probably was. But as her mother's labored breathing filled the silence of their tiny apartment, Nia knew she didn't really have a choice at all. The Morrison estate sat behind iron gates like a fortress, all glass and steel reaching toward the cloudy sky. Nia had never seen a house so big it looked more like a museum than a place where someone actually lived. Her beat-up Honda looked ridiculous in the circular driveway next to the sleek black cars parked there. A woman in a crisp uniform answered the door before Nia could even knock. "Miss Williams? Mr. Morrison is waiting for you in his study." The inside of the house was just as intimidating as the outside. Everything was white or black or silver, with no warmth anywhere. Nia's footsteps echoed on the marble floors as she followed the woman down a long hallway lined with paintings that probably cost more than most people's houses. The study was different. Books lined the walls from floor to ceiling, and afternoon sunlight streamed through tall windows. Behind a massive desk sat a man who looked nothing like the pictures she'd seen in magazines. Gabriel Morrison was still handsome, but illness had left its mark. His dark skin had an ashen undertone, and his once powerful frame seemed diminished inside his expensive clothes. But his eyes, deep brown and intense, still held the intelligence and determination that had built his empire. "Miss Williams." He stood slowly, his movements careful and measured. "Thank you for coming." His voice was rougher than she'd expected, probably from the treatments. Up close, she could see the slight tremor in his hands and the way he braced himself against the desk. "Mr. Morrison." Nia's own voice sounded small in the huge room. "Please sit." He gestured to a chair across from his desk. I assume you've read the contract. Most of it. She'd stayed up all night trying to understand the legal language. It's very detailed. A ghost of a smile crossed his face. My lawyers are thorough. Do you have questions? Nia had 100 questions, but only one really mattered. Why me? Gabriel was quiet for a long moment, studying her with those intense eyes. You remind me of someone I once knew. Someone who was strong and determined, no matter what life threw at her. Your wife. The words slipped out before Nia could stop them. His expression hardened. I've never been married, Miss Williams. My work has always been my priority. He paused, then continued more softly. Perhaps that was a mistake. The sadness in his voice surprised her. In all the magazine articles she'd read about him, Gabriel Morrison had always seemed like a machine focused only on success and money. But the man sitting across from her seemed almost lonely. The contract states that you'll live here during the pregnancy, he continued, back to business. You'll have your own wing of the house, complete privacy. The best doctors, nutritionists, and specialists money can buy will monitor your health. And you? Nia asked. Where will you be? I'll be here as well, but we won't need to interact much. This is a business arrangement, Miss Williams. Nothing more. The coldness in his voice sent a chill through her. This man was going to be the father of her child, but he was treating it like buying a car. What happens after the baby is born? She asked. You fulfill your contract and walk away. The child will be raised by nannies and eventually inherit my company. You'll be free to live your life however you choose, with enough money to do anything you want. It sounded simple when he said it like that. 9 months, $5 million, and a clean break. But Nia couldn't shake the feeling that nothing involving Gabriel Morrison would be simple. I need to ask about your health, she said carefully. The contract mentions treatments. Gabriel's jaw tightened. I have perhaps 4 to 6 months left, according to my doctors. The treatments are experimental with little chance of success. But I need to try for the sake of my company and the thousands of people who depend on it. The weight of his words settled over the room. This man was dying and he was trying to create a legacy before time ran out. Nia found herself wondering what it would be like to face death so young, to know your days were numbered. I'll need time to think, she said finally. Gabriel nodded. Of course. But Miss Williams, time is something I don't have much of. If you're going to say yes, it needs to be soon. As Nia left the estate, her mind was spinning with everything she'd learned. Gabriel Morrison wasn't the cold, heartless businessman she'd expected. He was a man racing against time, trying to ensure his life's work would survive even if he couldn't. But could she really go through with this? Could she carry a child for 9 months and then walk away like nothing had happened? The answer came to her as she pulled into the hospital parking lot to visit her mother. Sometimes life forced you to make impossible choices. And sometimes, those choices were the only way to save the people you loved. The medical clinic was unlike any place Nia had ever been. Everything was pristine white and gleaming silver, with machines that looked like they belonged on a spaceship. Dr. Patricia Chin, Gabriel's personal physician, walked her through test after test with professional efficiency. Your health is excellent, Dr. Chin announced after reviewing the results. No family history of complications, perfect blood work, optimal BMI. Mr. Morrison chose well. The way she said it made Nia feel like a prize horse being evaluated for breeding. When would the procedure happen? Next week if you sign the contract. The process is completely clinical in vitro fertilization using Mr. Morrison's genetic material. No physical contact between you and him required. Nia nodded, trying to ignore the knot in her stomach. She'd already made her decision, really? Her mother needed surgery within the month, or she would die. The $5 million would pay for everything and more. Back at the estate, Gabriel was waiting in his study with the lawyers. He looked tired, more worn down than just days before. The treatments were taking their toll. Miss Williams, he said as she entered, have you made your decision? Yes. Her voice was steady even though her hands were shaking. I'll do it. Relief flickered across Gabriel's face, so quickly she almost missed it. Excellent. Mr. Hayes will walk you through the contract details. The next hour was a blur of signatures and legal explanations. Nia would live in the east wing of the house, with her own entrance and complete privacy. She would receive regular medical checkups and follow a strict health regimen. In return, she would receive $1 million immediately, with the remaining $4 million paid after the successful birth of a healthy child. There's one more thing, Gabriel said after the lawyers had left. I'd prefer if you didn't mention our arrangement to anyone outside of the medical team. The media attention could be problematic. Nia understood. A poor black woman carrying a billionaire's baby would be tabloid gold. She'd already decided to tell her mother she'd gotten a job as a live-in assistant. "I'll pack my things tonight," she said. Gabriel nodded. "Mrs. Rodriguez will show you to your quarters. If you need anything, ask her. We want to make sure you're as comfortable as possible." The dismissal in his tone was clear. This was business to him, nothing more. But as Nia followed the housekeeper to her new home, she couldn't help wondering what Gabriel Morrison was really like underneath all that cold professionalism. The East Wing was like a luxury hotel suite. The bedroom was twice the size of her entire apartment, with a king-sized bed and a view of the estate's gardens. There was a sitting room with a fireplace, a full kitchen, and a bathroom with a tub big enough to swim in. "Mr. Morrison wants you to be comfortable," Mrs. Rodriguez explained in accented English. "He says anything you need, you just ask." "It's beautiful," Nia said, and meant it. But beautiful or not, it felt like a golden cage. That night, as she lay in the enormous bed surrounded by luxury she'd never dreamed of, Nia stared at the ceiling and wondered what she'd gotten herself into. In 9 months she would carry and deliver Gabriel Morrison's child, then walk away forever. It seemed impossible that something so complicated could really be that simple. But the wire transfer notification on her phone showed $1 million in her account, more money than she'd ever seen in her life. Her mother's surgery was scheduled for next week, and for the first time in months, Nia fell asleep without the weight of impossible bills crushing her chest. Still, she couldn't shake the feeling that she'd just signed her life away to a man who saw her as nothing more than a means to an end. Gabriel Morrison might be dying, but he was still one of the most powerful men in the world. And now, for the next 9 months, she belonged to him. The thought should have terrified her. Instead, as she drifted off to sleep in silk sheets that cost more than her monthly rent, Nia found herself wondering about the sadness she'd glimpsed in Gabriel's eyes. What secrets was he hiding behind that cold exterior? And why did she have the feeling that this arrangement was going to change both of their lives in ways neither of them expected? Living in the Morrison estate was like being trapped in a beautiful prison. Nia's days were scheduled down to the minute, meals prepared by a personal chef, yoga sessions with a private instructor, vitamins and supplements delivered at precise times. Everything was designed to create the perfect environment for pregnancy, but it felt more like being a very expensive lab rat. The IVF procedure had been successful on the first try. Dr. Chen confirmed the pregnancy with the kind of professional satisfaction usually reserved for successful business deals. Gabriel had simply nodded when given the news, as if he'd expected nothing less. "Congratulations, Miss Williams," he'd said in that same cold tone he used for everything. "The first phase of our agreement is complete." Now, 3 weeks into her pregnancy, Nia felt more isolated than ever. The estate was huge, but she rarely saw another soul except for Mrs. Rodriguez and the various medical professionals who came to check on her progress. Gabriel himself had become a ghost, occasionally glimpsed through windows or heard talking to his assistants in distant parts of the house. The loneliness was crushing. She tried calling her mother, but how could she explain her new life without revealing the truth? Her mother thought she was working as a live-in assistant for a wealthy family, not carrying their child. "The isolation is normal," Dr. Chen assured her during one of her weekly checkups. "Many surrogates experience feelings of disconnection. It's important to remember that this is temporary." But temporary felt like forever when every day stretched endlessly ahead of her. Nia had never been wealthy enough to not work, and the enforced leisure felt wrong. She tried reading books from Gabriel's extensive library, but even the most engaging novels couldn't fill the hollow ache in her chest. It was during her 4th week that she first encountered Gabriel outside of their formal meetings. She'd been walking in the gardens, one of the few activities Dr. Chen encouraged, when she heard the sound of someone coughing violently. Following the sound, she found Gabriel bent over behind a marble fountain, his body racked with spasms. Even from a distance, she could see the specks of blood on his white handkerchief. "Mr. Morrison?" She approached carefully, unsure if her presence would be welcome. He straightened quickly, trying to compose himself, but the effort clearly cost him. "Miss Williams, I didn't expect to see you out here. Are you all right?" It was a stupid question. Obviously he wasn't all right. But the formal distance between them made everything feel awkward. "I'm fine," he said, but his voice was rough and strained. Just a side effect of the treatments. They stood there in uncomfortable silence, the gulf between them feeling wider than ever. Nia wanted to say something comforting, but what comfort could she offer to a man who was paying her to carry his child? "The gardens are beautiful," she said finally. Gabriel glanced around as if seeing them for the first time. "My mother designed them. She loved roses." It was the first personal thing he'd ever shared with her. She had good taste. She did. His expression softened slightly. She would have loved. He stopped himself, the walls going back up. I should let you get back to your walk. He started to leave, but another coughing fit doubled him over. This time Nia didn't hesitate. She moved to his side, offering her arm for support. I'm fine, he protested, but he didn't pull away. You're not fine, Nia said gently. And that's okay. You don't have to pretend with me. For a moment, Gabriel leaned into her support, and Nia felt the full weight of his illness. This powerful, intimidating man was fighting a battle he couldn't win, and he was doing it completely alone. Thank you, he said quietly, straightening up again. But this isn't, we shouldn't. Shouldn't what? Show basic human kindness. Gabriel's eyes met hers, and for an instant she saw past the cold exterior to the man underneath. A man who was scared and lonely and facing death without anyone to hold his hand. Then the moment passed and the walls went back up. This is a business arrangement, Miss Williams. Nothing more. He walked away, leaving Nia standing in the garden with the scent of roses and the echo of his words. But she'd seen behind his mask now, and she couldn't unsee it. Gabriel Morrison might want to keep things purely professional, but they were bound together now in the most intimate way possible. She was carrying his child, his legacy, his hope for the future. Whether he wanted to admit it or not, they were no longer strangers. And despite his best efforts to maintain distance, Nia found herself caring about what happened to the lonely man who'd given her everything she needed to save her mother's life. That night, she lay in her luxurious bed thinking about the vulnerability she'd glimpsed in Gabriel's eyes. The contract said 9 months, but Nia was beginning to suspect that this arrangement would change her in ways that lasted much longer than that. The routine continued for another 2 weeks: medical appointments, healthy meals, solitary walks in the garden. But something had shifted since that day by the fountain. Gabriel still maintained his distance, but occasionally Nia would catch him watching her through windows or find small signs that he was thinking about her welfare. Fresh flowers appeared in her room daily. Her favorite tea, something she'd mentioned once in passing, was always available in the kitchen. When she'd casually mentioned missing her mother's cooking, Mrs. Rodriguez began preparing comfort foods that tasted remarkably like home. Mr. Morrison is very observant, Mrs. Rodriguez said one afternoon as she brought Nia a plate of perfectly seasoned fried chicken. He notices things. It was the housekeeper's gentle way of saying that Gabriel was paying more attention than he let on. The thought both warmed and worried Nia. She was supposed to be just a business arrangement, nothing more. The breakthrough came during her 7th week, when she discovered Gabriel in his study at 3 a.m. She'd been unable to sleep. Pregnancy insomnia was something Dr. Chen had warned her about, and had gone to the library to find something to read. The study door was open, and inside, Gabriel sat hunched over his computer, bathed in the blue glow of the screen. Even from the doorway she could see the exhaustion in every line of his body. Couldn't sleep either? She asked softly. He looked up, startled. Miss Williams. I didn't hear you. Sorry? I was just looking for something to read. She started to back away, but something in his expression stopped her. Are you working? Gabriel's laugh was bitter. Always. Though I suppose at this point it's more like trying to hold back the tide with my bare hands. The defeat in his voice broke her heart. It's your company? My company, my foundation, my life's work. All of it hanging by a thread because I was too proud and too stupid to plan for this. Nia found herself stepping into the study, drawn by the raw honesty in his voice. What do you mean? Gabriel leaned back in his chair, suddenly looking older than his 35 years. I always thought I had time. Time to find the right partner, time to build a family the right way. I threw myself into work instead, telling myself there would be time for everything else later. But you're building something amazing, Nia said, thinking of the articles she'd read about Morrison Tech's charitable programs and innovative research. Your company employs thousands of people, funds medical research, provides scholarships. None of which matters if there's no one to continue it after I'm gone. Gabriel's hands clenched into fists. My board of directors is already circling like vultures, waiting to carve up everything I've built and sell it to the highest bidder. For the first time, Nia understood the real pressure Gabriel was under. This wasn't just about having an heir, it was about preserving a legacy that helped thousands of people. The baby, she said quietly. That's what this is really about. Gabriel nodded. A blood heir changes everything. Legally, it ensures continuity. It gives me time to put structures in place to protect what I've built. They sat in comfortable silence for a moment, the weight of shared understanding settling between them. Gabriel wasn't just a dying billionaire trying to cheat death, he was a man desperately trying to protect something bigger than himself. Tell me about it, Nia said, settling into the chair across from his desk. Your company, I mean. What made you want to build all this? Gabriel's eyes lit up the first time she'd seen genuine enthusiasm from him. I grew up poor, he said. Really poor. My mother cleaned offices at night to keep food on the table. I learned to code on a computer she bought from a pawn shop with her tip money. As he talked, the cold businessman facade melted away, revealing someone passionate and driven by more than just profit. He told her about his first breakthrough, a piece of software that helped small businesses manage their finances. About how he'd used the money from that to fund education programs in low-income communities. Technology should lift people up, he said, his voice growing stronger. It should create opportunities, not just wealth, for people who already have it. Nia found herself leaning forward, captivated by this side of Gabriel she'd never seen. This was the man behind the headlines, the one who'd built an empire not just for personal gain but to make a real difference in the world. Your mother would be proud, she said softly. Gabriel's expression grew sad. I hope so. She died before she could see any of this success. Complications from diabetes that could have been easily managed if she'd had access to better health care. Is that why your foundation focuses on medical research? Part of it. Gabriel met her eyes. I never want another child to watch their parent die from something preventable. The sincerity in his voice made Nia's chest tight with emotion. This wasn't the cold, heartless businessman the media portrayed. This was a man who'd turned his pain into purpose, who was fighting to save others even as he faced his own mortality. I should let you get some rest, Gabriel said, suddenly seeming to realize how much he'd revealed. Actually, Nia said, surprising herself with her boldness, would you mind if I stayed? I've been having trouble sleeping and listening to you talk about your work. It's interesting. Gabriel studied her face as if trying to determine her sincerity. You really want to hear about software development and corporate strategy? I want to hear about what matters to you, Nia said honestly. Something shifted in Gabriel's expression, a crack in the wall he'd built around himself. All right, he said quietly. But I should warn you, I can talk about this for hours. Nia smiled, the first genuine smile she'd felt since moving into the estate. I've got time. And for the first time since their arrangement began, it felt like they might actually be two people having a conversation, rather than a billionaire and his hired surrogate. It was a small step, but Nia could feel something changing between them. The question was whether Gabriel would let those walls stay down, or if he'd rebuild them even higher come morning. Their late-night conversations became a routine. Gabriel would work in his study until exhaustion forced him to rest, and Nia, unable to sleep through her pregnancy symptoms, would join him with a cup of tea and endless questions about his work. You don't have to pretend to be interested, Gabriel said one night after explaining a complex software algorithm. I know this must be incredibly boring. It's not, Nia insisted, and she meant it. Watching Gabriel talk about his projects was like seeing a completely different person. His eyes lit up when he described new innovations, and his voice grew warm when he talked about the scholarship recipients or small businesses his programs had helped. Why did you drop out of college? He asked suddenly. The question caught Nia off guard. How did you know about that? Gabriel looked embarrassed. I had my lawyers run a background check before I chose you. I'm sorry. That was invasive. It's fine, Nia said, though it stung to be reminded that she'd been investigated like a business prospect. My mother got sick during my sophomore year. The medical bills and the time I spent caring for her. I couldn't keep up with both school and work. What were you studying? Education. I wanted to be a teacher. The old dream felt distant now, like something that had happened to someone else. Gabriel was quiet for a long moment. You still could be. After all this is over. You'll have the resources to finish your degree, pursue any career you want. The reminder of their arrangement hung heavy in the air. After the baby was born, she would walk away with $5 million and complete freedom. It should have excited her, but instead it just felt empty. What about you? She asked. What did you want to be when you were little? Gabriel's smile was sad. A father. Silly, right? Most kids want to be astronauts or firefighters. I just wanted a family. The confession hit Nia like a physical blow. Here was a man who dreamed of having children, now facing death with only a business contract to ensure his legacy continued. It's not silly, she said softly. Family is everything. Is it? Gabriel's voice was bitter. I've never had one. My father left before I was born, I was an only child, and my mother died when I was 22. I've built this empire, but at the end of the day, I go to bed alone in a house with 30 rooms. The loneliness in his voice made Nia's heart ache. You'll have the baby. Will I? Gabriel's laugh was hollow. I'll be lucky to live long enough to see the birth. And even if I do, what kind of father can I be? I know nothing about children, about love, about any of it. You know about caring for people, Nia said firmly. Look at everything you've built, the scholarship programs, the medical research funding, the job training centers. You've spent your whole life taking care of people you've never even met. Gabriel stared at her as if seeing her for the first time. I never thought of it that way. Maybe because you've been too busy taking care of everyone else to take care of yourself. Their eyes met across the desk and Nia felt something electric pass between them. For a moment, the space between them felt charged with possibility. Then Gabriel looked away, the walls going back up. We should be careful, he said quietly. This arrangement, it's complicated enough without. Without what? Nia challenged. Without treating each other like human beings? Without forgetting what this really is. But even as he said it, Gabriel didn't sound convinced. The connection between them was growing stronger with each conversation, each shared laugh, each moment of honest vulnerability. The next morning, Nia found a package outside her door. Inside was a collection of education textbooks, the latest editions of everything she would need to complete her degree. A simple note was attached, for when you're ready. The thoughtfulness of the gesture brought tears to her eyes. Gabriel was trying to maintain distance, but his actions showed he was thinking about her future, her dreams, her happiness. It was the kind of thing someone who cared would do. That afternoon, she sought him out in the garden where he was taking his daily walk, one of the few activities his doctor still allowed. Thank you for the books, she said, falling into step beside him. You're welcome. I thought, well, you should have options when this is over. They walked in comfortable silence for a while, both lost in their own thoughts. The garden was beautiful in the late afternoon light, roses blooming in every color imaginable. Your mother really did have excellent taste, Nia said, touching a particularly lovely pink bloom. She did. She used to say that gardens were proof that beautiful things could grow from the darkest soil. Sounds like a wise woman. She was. She would have liked you. The simple statement made Nia's breath catch. How can you know that? Gabriel stopped walking and turned to face her. Because you're strong and kind and you see the best in people, even when they don't deserve it. You've shown me more compassion in the last few weeks than most people have in my entire life. Gabriel? Nia's voice was barely a whisper. I know this is supposed to be business, he said, his voice rough with emotion. But I can't pretend anymore, that's all it is. Not when you're carrying my child. Not when you've become the brightest part of my day. The confession hung between them like a bridge neither was sure they should cross. Nia's heart was racing, torn between the growing feelings she'd been trying to ignore and the practical reality of their situation. What are you saying? She asked. Gabriel reached out as if to touch her face, then caught himself. I'm saying that maybe, for once in my life, I want to stop thinking about business and contracts and just feel something real. Before Nia could respond, a violent coughing fit seized Gabriel, doubling him over with its intensity. When he straightened, there was blood on his lips and fear in his eyes. I should go, he said, the moment shattered by the reminder of his mortality. Dr. Martinez wants to adjust my treatment schedule. As he walked away, Nia stood among the roses, her heart breaking for the man who was slowly dying just as she was beginning to care for him. Their connection was real and growing stronger every day, but time was running out. The question was whether they could build something meaningful in whatever time they had left, or if the weight of their arrangement would keep them forever apart. The shift between them was undeniable after that afternoon in the garden. Gabriel no longer avoided her, and their conversations grew deeper and more personal with each passing day. He showed her his favorite spots on the estate, shared stories from his childhood, and listened with genuine interest as she talked about her dreams and fears. I used to imagine what it would be like to have siblings, Nia confessed one evening as they sat by the fireplace in his study. Christmas mornings with lots of presents under the tree, family game nights, someone to call when life got hard. I imagined having a father, Gabriel admitted. Someone to teach me to throw a ball or help with homework. Someone who chose to stay. The pain in his voice made Nia want to reach for his hand, but she held back. The line between them was blurring more each day, and they both seemed afraid to cross it completely. Our child won't grow up feeling that loneliness, she said softly. Gabriel's eyes met hers. Our child. The words hung in the air between them, loaded with meaning neither was ready to fully explore. But for the first time Gabriel had said our instead of my, and it changed everything. As her pregnancy progressed into the second trimester, Nia began to show. Gabriel's eyes would linger on her growing belly with an expression of wonder and fear that took her breath away. During one of Dr. Chen's visits, they heard the baby's heartbeat for the first time. Strong and healthy, Dr. Chen announced with satisfaction. Would you like to know the gender? Nia looked at Gabriel, whose face had gone pale with emotion at the sound of his child's heartbeat. What do you think? Yes, he whispered. I'd like to know. Congratulations. You're having a daughter. The tears that rolled down Gabriel's cheeks surprised them both. He wiped them away quickly, embarrassed by the display of emotion. A daughter, he repeated, voice thick with wonder. Later that evening, Gabriel knocked on Nia's door with something hidden behind his back. I have something for you, he said, his usual confidence replaced by nervous uncertainty. He handed her a small wrapped box. Inside was a delicate silver necklace with a heart-shaped locket. My mother gave this to me before she died, Gabriel said quietly. She said it was for the woman who would give me a family. I thought you should have it. Nia's hands trembled as she held the precious heirloom. Gabriel, I can't. This should go to your daughter. It is going to my daughter. Through you. His eyes were serious, intense. You're giving me the greatest gift I could ever receive. This is just a small token of my gratitude. As Gabriel fastened the necklace around her neck, his fingers brushed her skin, sending shivers through her body. They were standing so close she could smell his cologne, feel the warmth radiating from his body. Nia, he said softly, and her name on his lips sounded different than it ever had before. She looked up into his eyes and saw her own feelings reflected there, the growing affection, the attraction they'd been fighting, the connection that had deepened from business arrangement to something that felt dangerously close to love. We shouldn't, she whispered, but she didn't step away. I know, Gabriel agreed, but his hand came up to cup her cheek. But I can't stop thinking about you. About us. About what this could be if things were different. Things aren't different, Nia said even as she leaned into his touch. You're sick and I'm carrying your baby, and in a few months I'm supposed to walk away forever. What if you didn't have to? The question hung between them like a promise and a threat. Gabriel's thumb traced her cheekbone, and Nia felt herself melting under his gentle touch. What are you saying? I'm saying that maybe this doesn't have to end when the baby is born. Maybe we could build something real together. Before Nia could respond, another coughing fit seized Gabriel, more violent than any before. This time when he pulled his handkerchief away, it was bright red with blood. Gabriel? Nia reached for him, but he was already pulling away. I'm fine, he said, but his breathing was labored and his face had gone ashen. You're not fine. We need to call Dr. Martinez. No, Gabriel said firmly. It's just a bad day. The treatments always make things worse before they make them better. But Nia could see the fear in his eyes, the way his hands shook as he tried to compose himself. Whatever was happening to him was getting worse, not better. Promise me, Gabriel said suddenly, gripping her hands. Promise me that if something happens to me you'll still want our daughter. That you won't just walk away and forget about us. Gabriel, don't talk like that. Promise me, Nia. Please. The desperation in his voice broke her heart. I promise, she whispered. But nothing's going to happen to you. The treatments are working and you're going to get better and we're going to figure this out together. Gabriel pulled her close, holding her tight against his chest as if she were an anchor in a storm. And for the first time since their arrangement began, Nia allowed herself to admit what she'd been fighting for weeks. She was falling in love with Gabriel Morrison. Not the billionaire or the business arrangement, but the man lonely and scared and fighting for every day he had left. The man who'd given her everything she needed to save her mother, who listened to her dreams and remembered her favorite tea, who looked at their unborn daughter with tears of joy and wonder. The question was whether they would have enough time to explore what was growing between them, or if fate would tear them apart just as they were beginning to find each other. Gabriel disappeared for 3 days after his coughing episode, and Nia was going out of her mind with worry. Mrs. Rodriguez assured her he was in the hospital for routine testing, but the housekeeper's worried expression told a different story. When Gabriel finally returned, he looked worse than ever. His skin had a gray pallor, and he moved like every step cost him tremendous effort. But there was something else in his expression, a kind of desperate determination that frightened Nia more than his physical decline. We need to talk, he said without preamble, finding her in the garden where she'd been anxiously waiting for news. How are you feeling? What did the doctors say? Gabriel gestured for her to sit on the marble bench beside the fountain where they'd first really talked. The treatments aren't working, Nia. They've stopped the cancer from spreading, but they can't reverse the damage that's already been done. Nia's heart plummeted. What does that mean? It means I have weeks, not months. Gabriel's voice was steady, but she could see the fear beneath his calm exterior. 6 weeks, maybe 8 if I'm lucky. The news hit her like a physical blow. 6 weeks. Their daughter would be born in 12 weeks, which meant Gabriel might not live to see her. There has to be something else they can try, she said desperately. Experimental treatments, clinical trials. There is. Gabriel's voice was quiet. But it's risky and there's something I need to tell you first. Something I should have told you from the beginning. Nia's stomach clenched with dread. What? Gabriel took a deep breath, as if steeling himself for a confession. The night before I got my diagnosis, I met someone. A woman at a charity gala. We talked for hours about books and art and dreams for the future. She was beautiful and intelligent and kind, and for the first time in my life I thought I might have found someone I could love. Jealousy twisted in Nia's chest, sharp and unexpected. What happened to her? I got the diagnosis the next morning and decided I couldn't drag anyone into my mess. I never called her, never tried to find her again. I threw myself into work instead and tried to forget about her. Why are you telling me this? Nia's voice was barely a whisper. Gabriel turned to face her fully, his eyes intense and searching. Because that woman was you, Nia. At the Children's Hospital Gala where you were working as a server. You were on your break, reading a book in the garden, and we talked until your shift ended. The memory hit Nia like lightning. 6 months ago, the most beautiful and sad man she'd ever met had found her hiding in the hospital garden with a worn copy of Jane Eyre. They'd talked about literature and life and the unfairness of the world, and she'd felt more connected to him in those few hours than she had to anyone in years. You're him, she breathed. The man in the garden. Gabriel nodded. I couldn't get you out of my head. When my lawyers started vetting potential surrogates, I remembered your name from the hospital's volunteer roster. I told myself it was coincidence, that I chose you because you met the medical criteria. But the truth is I chose you because I was already half in love with you. Nia's mind reeled with the implications. So this whole arrangement was my pathetic attempt to have you in my life without having to watch you suffer through my illness and death. Gabriel's voice broke. I thought I could keep it clinical, professional. I thought I could protect you from the pain of losing me. But you lied to me, Nia said, anger flaring alongside her shock. You made me think this was just business when you knew we had a connection. I know. I'm sorry. I was selfish and scared and I handled everything wrong. Gabriel reached for her hands but she pulled away. But I need you to know that everything I felt for you these past months has been real. My feelings, my growing love for you that's not part of some manipulation. Love. He'd said love. Despite her anger and confusion, the word sent warmth flooding through her chest. The experimental treatment, she said, trying to focus on facts instead of emotions. What is it? Aggressive chemotherapy combined with targeted radiation. It could buy me years, maybe even put me in remission permanently. But there's a significant chance it could kill me faster than the cancer would. How significant? Gabriel's jaw tightened. 40% chance of success. 60% chance I'll be dead within the month. Nia felt sick. The numbers were terrifying, but so was the alternative of watching Gabriel slowly waste away over the next 6 weeks. What do the doctors recommend? They're divided. Dr. Martinez thinks I should try go out fighting rather than just waiting to die. Dr. Chin thinks the risks are too great given how weak I already am. What do you think? Gabriel was quiet for a long moment, staring out at the roses his mother had planted. I think I want to live, Nia. I want to see our daughter born. I want to be a father, even if it's only for a little while. I want to have a chance to love you the way you deserve to be loved. Tears were streaming down Nia's face now. The man she'd fallen in love with was asking her to support a decision that could kill him. But he was also fighting for a future they could share together. If I do this, Gabriel continued, I need to know you'll be here. Not because of the contract, not because of obligation, but because you want to be. Because what we have is worth fighting for. Nia looked at the man who'd turned her life upside down in every possible way. He'd lied to her about their first meeting, manipulated their arrangement to bring her into his life, and now he was asking her to risk losing him just as they'd found each other. But he was also the man who'd saved her mother's life, who listened to her dreams and made her feel valued and understood. The man whose child she was carrying, whose love she'd stumbled into despite all her efforts to keep things professional. Yes, she said finally. I'll be here. But Gabriel? Yes. If you survive this treatment, we're going to have a long talk about honesty and communication in relationships. Gabriel's smile was the first genuinely happy expression she'd seen from him in days. Does that mean you're willing to try? To build something real with me? Nia stood and extended her hand to help him up. It means I'm tired of pretending this is just business when we both know it stopped being business weeks ago. Gabriel took her hand and pulled himself to his feet, then surprised her by drawing her close and kissing her softly. It was their first kiss, sweet and tentative and full of promise. I love you, Nia, he whispered against her lips. I know I have no right to, and I know the timing is terrible, but I needed you to know. I love you too, she admitted, the words feeling both terrifying and inevitable. Now let's go save your life so we can figure out what happens next. The treatment began immediately. Gabriel checked into a private medical facility where Dr. Martinez could monitor him around the clock during the most dangerous phase. Nia insisted on staying in a room down the hall, despite everyone's protest that it wasn't necessary. She's not leaving, Gabriel told Dr. Martinez firmly when the doctor suggested Nia might be more comfortable at home. And frankly, having her here gives me more motivation to fight than any medicine you could prescribe. The first week was brutal. The aggressive chemotherapy left Gabriel violently ill and weaker than Nia had ever seen him. But he refused to give up, clinging to consciousness through sheer force of will whenever she was in the room. Talk to me about the baby, he would whisper during his lucid moments. Tell me what you think she'll be like. Nia would describe their daughter's future, how she'd be smart like her father and strong like both her parents, how she'd change the world just like Gabriel had. The conversation seemed to give him strength when nothing else could. It was during the second week that Gabriel's half-brother Nathan appeared at the hospital, accompanied by the entire Morrison Tech board of directors. This is madness, Gabriel, Nathan declared, barging into Gabriel's room with his usual arrogance. You're killing yourself with these treatments, and for what? A bastard child with some woman you barely know. Nia, who'd been reading quietly in the corner, looked up sharply. Gabriel's face darkened with anger. Get out, Gabriel said, his voice deadly calm despite his weakness. I will not. Someone has to talk sense into you. Nathan's cold eyes fixed on Nia. And someone needs to explain to your arrangement that her services are no longer needed. Excuse me? Nia stood, her protective instincts flaring. The board has voted, Nathan continued as if she hadn't spoken. Gabriel's condition makes it clear he's no longer fit to run Morrison Tech. I'll be taking over as interim CEO, and one of my first decisions is to terminate this ridiculous surrogacy contract. You can't do that, Gabriel struggled to sit up in bed. The baby is my heir, protected by legal documents you can't touch. Nathan smiled coldly. Actually, I can. The contract is void if you die before the birth. And given your current condition, that seems likely. So I'm offering Miss Williams here a choice: take a settlement of $1 million and disappear, or face a very expensive legal battle she can't win. Nia's hands instinctively moved to protect her belly. This baby is Gabriel's daughter. She has rights. She's a fetus with no legal standing, Nathan said dismissively. And you're a surrogate with no parental claims once the contract is terminated. The contract isn't terminated, Gabriel said through gritted teeth. And it won't be. I'm going to survive this treatment, and I'm going to be here to raise my daughter. Face reality, Gabriel. You're dying. The kindest thing you can do for everyone is accept it and let the rest of us clean up your mess. Before Gabriel could respond, another voice cut through the tension. I don't think that's your decision to make. Everyone turned to see Dr. Martinez standing in the doorway with a tablet in her hand and a satisfied expression on her face. Mr. Morrison's latest blood work shows significant improvement, she announced. The cancer markers have dropped by 60%, and his white blood cell count is stabilizing. The treatment is working. The silence in the room was deafening. Nathan's face went pale, while Gabriel's eyes filled with tears of relief and hope. That's impossible, Nathan stammered. The doctors said. The doctors said there was a 40% chance of success, Dr. Martinez corrected. Mr. Morrison appears to be in that 40%. It's still early and we'll need to continue monitoring, but I'm cautiously optimistic about his prognosis. Nia sank back into her chair, overwhelmed with relief. Gabriel was going to live. They were going to have a chance at a real future together. Nathan's shock quickly turned to anger. This doesn't change anything. Gabriel is still unfit to run the company, and this whole surrogacy arrangement is still unethical and problematic. Actually, it changes everything, a new voice said from the doorway. A woman in an expensive suit entered the room, followed by several men in similar attire. Nia recognized her from business magazine's Elizabeth Hawthorne, one of the most powerful lawyers in the country. "Miss Hawthorne," Gabriel said weakly. "What are you doing here?" "Protecting your interests, Mr. Morrison. I've been retained by Miss Williams to review her contract and ensure her rights are protected." Nathan laughed harshly. "She can't afford Elizabeth Hawthorne." "Actually she can," Elizabeth said smoothly. "Miss Williams has $5 million, remember? More than enough to retain proper legal counsel. And after reviewing the contract, I'm prepared to file several lawsuits if anyone attempts to interfere with Mr. Morrison's wishes or Miss Williams' pregnancy." She handed Nathan a thick folder. "These are injunctions preventing any board actions regarding Morrison Tech's leadership without Gabriel's explicit consent, along with restraining orders preventing any contact with Miss Williams or attempts to coerce her into breaking her contract." Nathan's face was furious as he flipped through the legal documents. "You can't do this." "I just did," Elizabeth said cheerfully. "And if you'd like to test these injunctions in court, I should mention that Miss Williams is prepared to file additional suits for harassment, intimidation, and attempted coercion. The damages alone would bankrupt you personally." Gabriel was smiling despite his exhaustion. "When did you retain Miss Hawthorne?" he asked Nia. "Yesterday, when I realized Nathan might try something like this." Nia took Gabriel's hand. "I told you we were going to fight for our future. I meant it." Nathan and the board members filed out in defeated silence, leaving Gabriel, Nia, and the lawyers alone. "Thank you," Gabriel said to Elizabeth. "But I have to ask, how did you know to prepare all this?" Elizabeth smiled. "Your security team has been monitoring Nathan's activities for weeks. When they reported unusual board meetings and contact with competing law firms, I took the liberty of preparing for various contingencies." As the lawyers left to file their paperwork, Gabriel and Nia were finally alone. He pulled her down for a gentle kiss, careful not to disturb the 4 lines. "I love you," he whispered. "And I'm sorry you had to deal with Nathan's threats." "I love you too," Nia replied. "And I'm not going anywhere. We're in this together now, all 3 of us." Gabriel's hand found her belly, where their daughter was growing stronger every day. "All 3 of us," he agreed. "Though I suspect our daughter is going to be the toughest of us all." Nia laughed, feeling lighter than she had in weeks. Gabriel was getting better, Nathan's threats had been neutralized, and their future was finally beginning to look bright. They still had challenges ahead: Gabriel's recovery, preparing for parenthood, and building a relationship from the unusual foundation of their arrangement. But they had something even more powerful than money or legal contracts. They had love, and the determination to fight for each other no matter what obstacles they faced. 6 months later, Nia stood in the nursery of their new home, not the sterile mansion where their arrangement had begun, but a warm, comfortable house Gabriel had chosen specifically for raising a family. Sunlight streamed through the windows, illuminating the rocking chair where she spent hours each day with their daughter. Isabella Marie Morrison had arrived 3 weeks early, healthy and beautiful, with her father's intense eyes and her mother's determined spirit. Gabriel had been there for every moment of labor, holding Nia's hand and crying openly when their daughter took her first breath. "She's perfect," he'd whispered, cradling Isabella with the reverence of a man who'd never expected to hold his own child. The past months had been a whirlwind of changes. Gabriel's recovery had exceeded all expectations. The cancer was in complete remission, and his strength had returned gradually but steadily. Nathan's attempted corporate coup had failed spectacularly, resulting in his removal from the company and several criminal charges for fraud and embezzlement. But the biggest change had been in Gabriel himself. The cold, distant businessman had been replaced by a man who prioritized family above everything else. He'd stepped back from day-to-day operations at Morrison Tech, appointing trusted executives to handle the company while he focused on being a husband and father. "I spent 35 years building a company," he told the board during his first meeting after recovery. "Now I want to spend whatever time I have left building a family." They'd married in a small ceremony at the hospital, with Dr. Martinez as their witness and Isabella sleeping peacefully in Gabriel's arms. It wasn't the wedding either of them had dreamed of as children, but it was perfect for them, a symbol of the love they'd built from the most unlikely beginning. "She's going to wake up soon," Gabriel said now, entering the nursery with 2 cups of coffee and that soft smile he wore whenever he looked at his daughter. "She's been sleeping for 3 hours, Nia agreed, accepting the coffee gratefully. "I think she inherited your work ethic. She approaches sleep like a project to be completed efficiently." Gabriel laughed, settling into the chair beside hers. They sat in comfortable silence, watching their daughter sleep and marveling at the miracle of their family. "Do you ever regret it?" Gabriel asked suddenly. "The way we started, I mean. The contract, the deception, all of it?" Nia considered the question seriously. The arrangement that had brought them together had been built on desperation and manipulation, but it had also saved her mother's life and given her the greatest love she'd ever known. "I regret that you felt you couldn't just ask me out for coffee like a normal person," she said finally. "But I don't regret anything that led us here." Gabriel's relief was visible. "I'll spend the rest of my life making up for the lies I told at the beginning." "You already have," Nia assured him. "Every day you choose honesty over control, every time you put us before your work, every moment you show me that love is more important to you than protecting yourself." Isabella stirred in her crib, making the soft sounds that meant she was waking up. Gabriel was on his feet immediately, lifting their daughter with the practiced ease of a man who'd never missed a feeding or diaper change. "Hello, beautiful girl," he murmured, and Isabella's eyes opened to focus on her father's face. The love in Gabriel's expression was so pure it took Nia's breath away. "I have news," Gabriel said as he settled back into his chair with Isabella. "Dr. Martinez called this morning with my latest test results." Nia's heart skipped. Despite Gabriel's excellent recovery, she still worried every time he had medical appointments. "The scans are completely clear," Gabriel continued, his voice thick with emotion. "No signs of cancer anywhere. Dr. Martinez says I'm officially in long-term remission." Relief flooded through Nia so powerfully she had to grip her chair to steady herself. "Really? You're sure?" "As sure as medical science can be," Gabriel confirmed. "It looks like I'm going to be around to see Isabella graduate from college, get married, and probably complain about her old man embarrassing her at family dinners." Tears of joy streamed down Nia's face. The future they'd fought so hard for was finally, truly theirs. "Speaking of the future," Gabriel said, reaching into his pocket with his free hand, "there's something else we need to discuss." He pulled out a folded document, not a contract this time, but something that looked more personal. "What is it?" Nia asked. "Adoption papers," Gabriel said softly. "If you're willing, I'd like to legally adopt you as my daughter's mother. Not as a surrogate, not as part of any arrangement, but as her mom. Equal parental rights, equal decision-making, equal everything." Nia stared at the papers through her tears. Even though they were married now, the original contract had technically made her a surrogate with no legal parental rights. Gabriel was offering to change that completely. "You want me to be her legal mother?" "I want you to be her mother in every way possible," Gabriel said firmly. "I want your name on her birth certificate. I want you to have the right to make medical decisions if something ever happens to me. I want the world to know that Isabella has two parents who love her more than life itself." Without hesitation, Nia took the papers and signed them. "Yes. 1,000 times yes." As if sensing the importance of the moment, Isabella chose that instant to smile, her first real smile, not just gas, but genuine happiness at seeing her parents' faces. "She approves?" Gabriel laughed, wiping away his own tears. "Of course she does," Nia said, leaning over to kiss both Gabriel and Isabella. "She's a smart girl. She knows a good family when she sees one." Later that evening, after Isabella was asleep and they were curled up together on the couch, Gabriel pulled out a photo album he'd been working on. "I want to document everything," he explained, showing Nia pictures from the past months. "Isabella's first days, our wedding, your mother holding her granddaughter for the first time. I want her to know her story, all of it, even the complicated beginning." Nia smiled at a picture of her mother, healthy and radiant after her successful surgery, holding Isabella with tears of gratitude streaming down her face. "How do we explain the contract to her when she's older?" Nia asked. Gabriel was quiet for a moment, considering. "We tell her the truth. That I was a scared, lonely man who thought he was going to die alone. That her mother was a brave, selfless woman who saved 2 lives, mine and her grandmother's. That love found a way even when the circumstances were impossible. And if she asks if we would have found each other without the arrangement?" Gabriel smiled, pulling Nia closer. "We tell her that love always finds a way. Maybe it would have taken longer, maybe we would have met differently, but somehow, someway we would have ended up exactly where we are now." As they sat together in their cozy living room, surrounded by pictures of their daughter and the life they'd built together, Nia reflected on the incredible journey that had brought them here. What had started as a desperate business arrangement had become the greatest love story of her life. Gabriel was right, love had found a way. Through contracts and complications, through illness and family drama, through fear and uncertainty, love had persevered. And now they had forever to enjoy the family they'd fought so hard to create. "Thank you," Gabriel said softly, his arms tightening around her. "For what?" "For saying yes to an impossible proposition. For staying when things got complicated. For fighting for us when I was too weak to fight for myself. For giving me the family I never thought I'd have." Nia kissed him softly, tasting the salt of happy tears. "Thank you for choosing me, even if you did it in the most complicated way possible." "I choose you again," Gabriel murmured against her lips. "In every lifetime, in every universe, in every possible scenario. You and Isabella are my heart." From the nursery, they heard Isabella's soft sounds as she stirred in her sleep, and both parents smiled at the sweet sound of their daughter dreaming. Their story had begun with a contract, but it would continue with love pure, simple, and strong enough to overcome anything life might throw their way. The dying billionaire had found his reason to live, the struggling young woman had found her happily ever after, and their daughter would grow up knowing she was the product of the greatest love story ever told. As Gabriel had once said, beautiful things could grow from the darkest soil. Their family was proof of that truth, and they would spend the rest of their lives nurturing the love that had bloomed against all odds. Thank you so much for joining Gabriel and Nia on their incredible journey from a desperate business arrangement to true love. Their story proves that sometimes the most beautiful relationships can grow from the most unexpected beginnings. I'd love to hear your thoughts on their story. What did you think about Gabriel's decision to hide their first meeting? Did you find yourself rooting for them despite the complicated circumstances? And what was your favorite moment between Gabriel and Nia as they fell in love? Do you think Gabriel was justified in his deception about their first meeting, or should he have been honest from the beginning? What moment made you believe that their relationship had moved beyond just business? How did you feel about Nathan's attempts to break them apart? Did you see it coming? What do you think their life will be like 5 years from now? If you were in Nia's situation, would you have made the same choices? Please share your thoughts and favorite moments in the comments below. I read every single one and love connecting with readers who've been moved by these characters' journey to happiness. With love and gratitude, your author Red Heart.